off with maybe just an update on where are we, what's going on, anything new that everybody needs to hear about.
Oh my gosh, Steve. I thought quantum was moving fast, and now I've discovered a new pace, which is where you add quantum plus AI. So I think the pace has been incredible. I'd say the last time we did this, which is just 2 months ago or a month ago, uh, everything's been changing. How you write software, how you connect it all together. The first real applications are coming out. And I think this points out more than ever how everyone on this call needs to predict the future and aim for that. You can't just see what's in the news and then do things, right? Because and everything about both quantum and AI is all about that. And this is we'll get into the news, but there's been so much happening this quarter. It's incredible. Yeah.
Excellent. And yeah, I'm just trying to kind of learn these buttons here. I couldn't get myself off the mute. Good. So shall we dive into the presentation, Rich, and
Yeah,
kind
why
of
don't
go
we?
through?
Yeah, I think this is sort of a conversation starter. We got a couple slides. I want to show some examples, talk about what happened last year, what we think is happening this year. So just, I hope we can do this more regularly, just to give some continuity, because it just seems like the news just keeps barreling on, and I think a little context is good. Great. So just to talk a little bit about who we are as a company, we're partnered with Steve. We're bosom buddies, and we call ourselves the Total Neural Enterprises because we think every enterprise is going to have to get tangible benefits, and that's what our job is. Don't you think, Steve? To get to building real things that really work. At HSBC, or when I was at Microsoft, that was important. And just to talk about, we're going to talk about predictions, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what we're building. But we're really trying to build an AI operating system layer on top of all this crazy confusion, and that's reliable and private. So I'm going to cover three sections. The first is sort of our view on predicting things. And then we're going to talk about the products we're doing, which is basically based on our predictions. We got to shoot ahead of the curve. And then sort of our unique way of working. So I'll show some examples. Make sense? Yeah.
Complete sense.
All right, let's go to the next one. So, Steve, I do this chart every day, and I think that eventually the number of papers per month is going to fall, and I'm wrong every month. So last month, 11,000 papers were published in the open internet. Look at that curve. I mean, what do you
Yeah,
think? I mean, it's just astounding how much
yeah.
research there is. And one of the key things that we do, you and me, is try to
Hmm.
digest that all to something that businesses can do things with. I'll tell you, every software vendor I know, they just can't keep up. Just last week, for instance, the speed to translate this conversation to text increased by a factor of 50. So every
That's
speech to text
yeah.
system is now obsolete. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's incredible. And so these are real humans, real people writing these papers?
Absolutely. Real humans writing paper. Well, we think they're real humans. They are um, let's just say maybe there's AI slop in this, but the vast majority, I read a lot of these papers. They're real papers. People everywhere around the world, Steve. You know that, living in Dubai and I'm living on an airplane, basically, how many smart people are working everywhere? It's just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean it's this is the area where everybody and anybody I talk to, we can't have a conversation without using the word AI. And so it's just incredible on this technology and how prolific it is in every industry, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's in some ways for every CEO or CIO, it's your responsibility to figure out how to keep up with this. And sort of the reason we're here, right, Steve, is to digest all of this. No one can possibly keep up with this much data. Let's go to the next
Correct.
slide. So I just want to introduce who we are. I mean, obviously, everyone knows Steve since he's hosting it, but the team consists of myself. So I worked at Microsoft and then two venture capital firms, and we've already sold one AI company called Surround.io. We're looking to basically build this next big one with you. But some of the other people are very notable. So Paul Moritz was the number three guy at Microsoft. He then spun VMware out, made that a huge success, and then spun Pivotal, which is a hybrid cloud company, out. And my technical co-founder Satoshi Nakajima, who's most famous for writing the graphics device interface, which is basically how Windows draws things on screens, and then writing the first browser for Microsoft. So we are spending all of our time trying to figure out what is next, what's going to happen next. Next slide. Um, I did this slide, Steve, just so because I like to. We every year we do a prediction, and we've been doing this. I've been doing this for basically 20 years for Paul Moritz, and we have to go back and grade ourselves as to how we did. So our predictions last year focused on this move to privacy and safety was really going to be a big deal. And if you go across the 5 layers of the stack, I'm not going to go through all this in detail, but basically this is down from the very bottom, model internals, what's happening out of the box and how you tune them, then where you run them, and then how you write programs for them in the customers and industry. Actually, we didn't do so bad. I mean, basically, the predictions were um, it was going to be raining large language models, and they were going to be commoditized very quickly, and open source was going to catch up. That was true. Uh, I can't believe the number of open source models there are. We only talk about the big ones in this, but actually, there were 1.2 million separately fine-tuned models you and I can just download from the web, right? Just for free.
Yeah,
It,
yeah, yeah,
un,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And one of the big things that happened was basically they devoured the entire internet. And there are all these new techniques that I'm not going to go into for basically tuning models, but that was a big crash. People thought that, you know, we'd have a 40 trillion parameter model. Just to give you a sense, most models are about 1.2 trillion parameters. So that's
Hmm.
big, right? That requires like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of hardware. Whereas a billion parameter model you can run on your phone. So this is the difference, right? A billion versus a trillion is actually a big deal. And there's just a sea of these tiny models. And then in the hardware world, essentially, NVIDIA is doing super well, but essentially there was a huge price crash in terms of cost per compute. And the edge compute really came out quickly. Mac and there's a bunch of technologies basically made it possible to run these models online. The online models run on your PC, and that was a huge trend. Um, and then in the tools thing, there was a lot of hype about agents, right? Like agents are going to change the world. They're going to book your travel and so forth. But there really wasn't that much that happened in 2024. And then for customers, I mean, I think we really found this deployment was just really hard. Right? You saw this, Steve, right? Everyone talked about it. Remember, everyone was like, we're going to roll this out. And then, what happened? You just had a
Yep,
big stoppage. So
yep.
we decided as a result of this to really focus on privacy and safety. And we're going to see this in a little bit how that's been paying dividends for everybody. So why
I
don't we go
think
to
that's
go
I
ahead,
think
Steve.
that's the new hot topic, right? People are talking about, AI going wrong and
Yeah,
some of the stuff, and so um, because there's such a big proliferation of this AI,
yeah,
I think the next iteration will be how do I control, how do I
yeah,
manage, how do I audit, how can I see
yeah,
this? And I know that you're working deeply into this space,
yeah,
but I think that's going to be. I think first it was get full of AI and you can use all these different things. And now it's going to be holy smokes, we let this all get out there. Now, how do we control it? How do we
yeah.
manage it?
Exactly,
I think
exactly.
that's going to be the next big way to the big focus, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I just want to show you how accurate the predictions were. And by the way, this allowed Steve and I to work together on building a highly safe private system for this year. And then we're going to talk about next year because there's a bunch more things coming up next year. So we're always trying to be 1 year ahead, right, Steve?
Yeah.
That's really the trick in this business. So I just want to show you how these things played out. So this is a chart that shows the performance of large language models to late 2023.
Hmm.
And you can see this is done by chess ratings. So if you've ever played chess, if you win, you get more points. If you lose, you get fewer points. So they basically had this competition online. It's like, let's see what GPT says, and then let's try somebody else. Do I like this or that better? And what you see here is basically 200 points is a massive difference. I mean, basically means you're just crushing people. But 100 points means that the worst model still wins like 40% of the time. So as you get closer and closer, the differences get smaller and smaller. But it's interesting
Hmm.
to note, amongst all the hype about how GPT-4 is going to be the best model in the world, this Google researcher wrote this memo that said, and by the way, Google was back then everyone thought they're going to be behind, they weren't going to win. But he said something really important, which is while our models still hold a slight edge in terms of quality, he wrote a memo that said we have no moat and neither does OpenAI. And here's why: because giant models are
Wow.
slowing us down. I mean, that's a huge thing to say, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
that is a really big thing to say.
And your colleague of mine, Paul Moritz, picked this up and said, "This is the thing you should pay attention to, Rich." And he's usually right on these things. And he said, and the reasons are very simple. Giant models are slowing us down. In the long run, the best models are ones which can be iterated upon quickly. And the reason is if you have a big model, it takes months and days to tune, whereas a small model is like, hours. We should make small variants more than an afterthought. Directly competing with open source is a losing proposition. The modern internet runs on open source models for a reason. So
Yeah.
let's just go to the next scene and see what happened last month, which is exactly 2 years later. Okay, here's the big news. Every model on this page, and this comes from LM Arena, is essentially identical in performance. They're within 100 or so points. So we went from gigantic leads to not much at all. And by the way, 8 of these models I can run on my personal computer. I mean, look at these. This is a huge. It's just not DeepSeek R1. There's one here called Gemini. By the way, Google followed up on this. Their open source free model, which is down at the bottom, runs on my laptop at full speed, and it's within the range of their best $1 model. Look at all these models you can now run. What that means is privacy is within the reach of everyone on this call, right? Because you can deploy these in your own infrastructure on Azure or wherever you want, and the data is kept in one place. A big deal for banks, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I think so. And the thing is, I actually find this incredibly interesting, so much so that I'm asking for your help to get these these
Yeah,
models put on my
we're gonna get.
laptop so
Yeah, yeah,
I could practice what I preach here
you
and
bet.
kind of start working it in my. So hopefully, when we're in Dubai next week, and actually a shout out for anybody listening in Dubai, we've got a VIP event at the AI at the DIFC. So if anybody's in Dubai and you guys are interested in joining, please reach out to Steve at horizonxc.com. And Rich and I will be there with the other people, talking kind of face to face on the latest stuff on AI.
Yeah,
So yeah, no, I'm actually excited. I'm actually looking forward to putting some of these models. I just bought a new MacBook
yeah,
myself,
yeah.
and I'm sure Rich, a lot of people would like to understand, kind of, to be able to replicate it and do it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not just running it on your laptop, although your laptop's going to be great doing that. But it just means that you don't have to buy an expensive server from AWS or from Azure. It means that you can run a lot more queries more cheaply, and cost is going to matter too. So I just wanted to cover that and then talk about the lessons that are learned from this. So let's do the next slide.
Yep.
So the first
And
lesson, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
no, I was just going to say, for anybody on the call, it would be good to just let us know where you're calling in from or what's
Yeah.
going on. I see on the messages, Brenda in Detroit. I see Natalia in Dubai, and yeah. So if you guys want to start dropping messages or anything in the chat, that would be great. So
Um,
sorry, Rich. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just kind of letting our listeners know that I'm paying attention. So you see me looking over here to my right. I'm looking here, looking at the chat. So go ahead.
well, we love Motor City, so I'm glad Brenda's here listening. So this is the first lesson, which is that people talk a lot about how many hundreds of millions of dollars are raised, et cetera, and how much sort of like the number of GPUs has become the new way to measure your vitality as a company. And it's interesting. Oh, we have a London person. Well, that's great. So we're here too. Um, and what's interesting to note is this is a chart that shows the number of GPUs that are owned by various companies and their scores. And so the red is their scores, and the blue is the number of GPUs they have. Not super correlated, don't you think, Steve?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't seem to
absolutely.
matter that much. And I always reflect on the fact that Google. By the way, no one knows really how many of these guys have. And OpenAI is talking about getting over like 10 billion of these things,
Wow.
right? I'm up from 400,000, and DeepSeek we think is about 50,000. But it's interesting to note it's not that correlated to winning, right?
Mhm.
Um, I always think about my little junior. Oh, another Dubai person. That's great. Hello, Elsa. Oh yeah,
I
Alia.
think I think you're getting updates faster than I am.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know if my refresh rate's not there, but maybe you'll have to handle all the chats that are
Oh
coming
yeah,
in.
well, for my 16 followers, I'm quite expert at doing this. Don't worry. But it's interesting to know my junior college, Stanford, has about 1,000 GPUs. All of Canada is about 2,000, and they're one of the world leaders in research. And what it proves, once again, you and I have seen this every time in organizations, right? Quality and quantity of people, that's the biggest variable. It's not how much money you have, it's how well you apply it. And I think that's what's so great about open research. It's just an open playing field. Anyone from anywhere can make it happen. Oh, Singapore, we'll be there next week, Natalia. All right, so let's take a look at the next slide. Oh, Cater. All right. So, and I just want to explain to people why it's so hard to beat the open internet. This chart shows the head count of companies and their scores. And you see Google like at 183,000 people, OpenAI, which include Microsoft, is a quarter of a million, Meta 67,000. Now, no one knows how many people are on the open internet, but it's estimated there are about 22 million people contributing open source software. It's just hard to be 22 million people. There's going to be a smart one out there somewhere in the world doing things. And so I think that you're seeing is companies and software vendors who lean in on this stuff. Oh, from Bangladesh. Hello, Anisha. Um, are going to win. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to take all of that massive information and just curate it so it's just really useful for everyone.
Yeah, no, what I find interesting in this slide is that the amount. So number one, you can't compete with the crowd, right?
Yeah.
The
Yep.
crowd
Yep.
crowd will always win, and no
Always.
matter what you do. Um, but then also what AI is doing is letting you compete against the big boys because you don't need
That's
as
right.
many employees. Um, I don't know if this slide shows you how many employees like DeepSeek has. Um,
No, it's estimated about 200. Just to give you
that's
a, I
crazy.
they don't even fit. They don't even fit on the and but remember the reason they can do that is they're completely part of the open source community,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're completely a part of that. Well, more people from London, and someone wants to talk about quantum, which I'm happy about too
Yeah,
to
yeah,
talk
we
about as
can.
well.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Rich, I think you're going to be the one asking the questions because
Oh
I,
yeah, you
I think
bet.
your refresh rate is faster. So you guys go ahead and ask the questions, and I'm sure once we get
Yeah,
into it, we can go ahead and answer
sounds
them. We
good.
want to make sure that we can answer your questions. And you know what? I won't stop anybody from asking quantum questions. So,
You can.
um, it's a topic near and dear to my heart, and anything that we can talk about, we will.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Well, let's talk about 2025. I wanted to show you this chart because it shows you where we're headed. And basically, if you go across the five-part stack, each one of these, I think, is a button that shows what we think is the most important. And I can't tell you the advances that are coming. Let's just start at the bottom. So we think image, speech, voice by the end of this year, there won't be any difference. You can feed every model a full video of this conversation, it'll talk to you. There's this thing called context, which is basically how much the model knows about. 10 million tokens, Steve, is about 300,000 pages of text.
Well,
So,
why don't you explain the tokens? Because I
okay,
think a lot of people hear about tokens and how that
yeah,
works. And so like in computer speak, you got bits, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and I know that in AI speak, it's kind of about tokens. So would you mind just at a rudimentary perspective, what is a token? How many what does that look like?
That's a good question. I think the easiest way to think about it, Steve, is a token is basically a syllable.
A syllable.
That's
Okay.
really like the word refinement you see up there. It's
Yeah.
probably tokenized as REFINEMENT. And the reason
Okay.
they're doing this is it turns out, you know this in English, right?
How many tokens would that be? Sorry, I'm a
I mean,
dyslexic.
that would be three tokens,
So that would
right?
be three tokens.
Right. The word,
Refinement would be three tokens.
right. And good, which is one, is probably one token,
I
right?
see. So
Post
it's
would be
all
one
about
token.
syllables.
It's all about
And so
symbols.
that's good. That's actually the best way I've heard somebody kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
talk
It's
about it. Okay.
actually a zillion times more complicated than that, but that's the essential idea. And here's the reason why they did it this way. Let's talk about the word post training and pre training. Well, it turns out the important word is the word train, right? It's not the
Yeah.
post and it's not the pre and it's not the ing. So by breaking to syllables, just like when you teach your kids to sound out verb things,
Yeah,
that's the computers are sort of exactly the same way. So it gives you a way to basically work at the syllable level. So you don't have to understand a word like data centers. You can understand data and then center. So
got
that's
it.
the
Got
essential
it.
idea. So basically, for those who are a little geeky, there's about 1.25 tokens per word. Turns out most words just have one token, like good, right? And some
Yeah,
are long, but we tend to use very simple words. So 10 million tokens is about 8 million words. Man, that's a lot of data. That means you could load in like at HSBC, every governance doc, like probably every piece of code that's ever been written at HSBC could fit in 10 million tokens. Think about
yeah,
that for a second. Like, so the
yeah.
model would know everything.
Let's pick on another bank. I've been out of that bank for a while. So,
Yeah, that's not going. Well, you can pick any bank you want, right, or any
yeah,
company you want. The likelihood that you have 10 million lines of code anywhere is really low. What that means is the model can understand it all, right? So we're at that point where models can understand almost everything. And then one of the implications of that is that um, training is going to be much easier because now you can train on your data, right?
mhm,
You can train on your own personal data. You don't have to use it, and you can build your own model. So that's sort of the fine tuning and training in the second bucket. And then I'm not going to talk too much about hardware, but I think one of the big implications is because all these models are trained and their performance is much better and they're smaller, you can actually imagine a sovereign data center in a country. In the old days, it'd be like, oh, I have to use a big data center for somewhere else, but you could imagine a European data center with only European data and European sovereignty, or one in Dubai, or even one in Kenya. That's going to be a big trend, I think,
mhm.
because that means that a government doesn't have to worry about data leakage. GDPR becomes a lot simpler if the data just sits in Europe, as we know. And this can be true for
Yeah,
every country in the world. But I think the big news is at the next layer, which has to do with how you operate and write programs for this. And the first is it's all going to be about, in terms of operations, it's all going to be about explainability and compliance. Aren't you seeing this over and over again? I can't
yeah,
deploy this unless I know how it works and I can explain it. Saying it just popped, I don't know where this credit report came from. It just sort of came. That's not going to work.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there's
No, I
going to be,
mean, it's always
yeah,
been explainability and traceability.
yeah,
And if
yeah,
you can't explain it and it's not traceable, then you can't put it in production.
yeah, yeah,
And that's definitely always been the case. And I can see, but it gets worse because in AI, how do you explain what the AI is doing? A lot
yeah.
of people can't. I mean, people, and so it will be one of those things where maybe an AI can be a better predictor and a better use.
Yeah.
But if you can't explain it or it's not traceable, then you won't be able to put it to production. So I do worry that some markets will be ahead because they won't have the same limitations that other markets will have.
I think that can happen. I think, though, that as you know, our big mission right now is to make it easy to write these apps, make them explainable, improve traceability. And so our 2025 product plan is just to focus right on that so everyone can get the benefits without worrying. And let's face it, we talk about a lot about compliance, Steve. It's just going to be better software. I mean, how
Yeah,
can you write
yeah,
software you don't understand? Hello, from Chile.
exactly.
Well, yeah. So I think our big focus last year was safety and privacy. Now it's on explainability, writing code more quickly. Because the punchline is, I think this year there's going to be some real apps. I mean, Steve, you and I see them all the time. Customer service apps, know your
Mhm.
customer, CRM. These things are real and exciting. And it's really up to us as an industry not to do things the old way. I think the
Yeah,
biggest message for 2025 is if you're a CTO and you're like, okay, I got to hire 5 developers to do this, 3 developers to do that, 4 people to do explainability, you're probably doing something a little wrong. We're trying to get to the point where you just have, you know, literally 10 times fewer people doing the same thing and have the AI help you do the work in an explainable, traceable way. And that's going to, I think the big startups, and this is the story I think will become famous. This is my prediction that the average size of a startup earning 10 to $20 million of revenue is going to have a development team that maybe is 1/5 the size. They're way more
that's
powerful
crazy.
and they're going to be way richer, which is great. But the apps are going to be much cheaper because we don't have to put much
Yeah,
manpower into it. Let's go to
yeah,
the next
yeah,
slide
yeah.
and talk about the implications.
Sure.
So I just wanted to highlight this. Last year, Satya Nadella on the left said SaaS is dead. And then they said AI agents are here. This is the Y Combinator thing from November. So just to drill into that, here is what really happened. Let's go to the next slide. So the RAND Corporation published a study, and here's what they discovered. 80% of all AI projects are failing. By the way, sort of depressingly, 40% of all software projects in enterprise actually do fail,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is you and I are, we know
I
this.
was I was in project management my whole life. I definitely saw that happen and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And you could a lot of times you could see how it fails and the
yeah,
reasons. And
yeah,
I could imagine now with AI, it just compounded.
yeah, yeah.
And
Because you're trying
everybody
to,
trying to prove concepts that have already been
yeah,
proven.
yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And the funny thing, of course, is the number one thing is the same thing has been true for, I don't know, 30 years. People misunderstand the problem or miscommunicate the problem. So you're not even solving the right problem, right? And one of the things we're working on are tools that basically are much more about problem definition than they are about writing software. Because if you understand the real problem, you do a much better job. The second ones are the other ones are pretty obvious. You don't have the data to adequately train an AI model. What's changing here is these foundation models are so good, you can just add a little bit of your own data and then you have a trained model. So that's really changing. And
Hmm.
then, of course, too much focus on using. How many times have you seen this in a slide in your life? Latest technology versus solving real problems, right? It's like I
Hmm.
want to implement this in house. So one of the things we're doing is we're using things that are heavily used in the open source community. So you're not really betting on the latest technology. You're betting on things that tens of thousands of people are using already. And then,
Rich, it's kind of funny. I mean, it's the AI has created kind of this, I call it AI FOMO.
yeah,
Everybody wants to be doing something in AI. I had a client, I won't obviously name to protect the guilty, but the client was telling me, look, I need to do a project that has to be an AI project instead of saying, hey, I got this problem, I need to solve it.
exactly.
And I can tell you a lot of things, problems need to be solved, don't need to use AI.
Yeah,
Some people
yeah,
say, oh, I want to use quantum. And I'm like, no, you don't. You don't want to use quantum for these problems.
yeah, yeah,
And so part of it is people have this kind of this FOMO to say, they're going straight for the technology and saying, all right, how do I use this technology? And I think it's going to be important that if we use it for the right things where it's meant to be, but let's focus on the problems first and then get to the solutions
yeah, yeah,
afterwards. I like what Einstein said was, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 55 minutes thinking about the problem and the last 5 minutes on the solution.
yeah, yeah,
But I think this is kind of like everybody goes straight to AI.
yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah.
as the answer?
Yeah, yeah, and you want to build, of course, you want to build a 50-person AI team, et cetera, et cetera. And what I always tell people is, uh, back in the bad old days when everyone was trying to move to cloud, it's like, oh, I got to hire a huge team to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And the answer is just use Azure, right? And in this case, I think, I've seen so many cases
You
where
still got your Microsoft stock? Is that right?
I got plenty of Microsoft stock. I got plenty of NVIDIA stock. I got plenty of stock, but
um,
I think it's important to realize that, depending on a company like TNE or Horizon X is really one of the key things, which
yeah.
is hiring your own internal team is not the only thing. Oh, we got a question from Emma.
All right.
Yeah,
Why don't you go ahead and see what you want to go ahead and answer the
yeah, I'll answer
question
the
there,
question right
Rich?
now. I think there are a lot of challenges with different regulators and different levels of concern. We're working right now on a project that is essentially having I'll be a little technical. Basically, I'll be less technical. It's basically a plug-in module so that as every new advance in AI explainability comes out, you can just plug it in and add it. So instead of, oh, we are only compliant with this thing, when a new way to explain things come out, you need to be able to quickly deploy it. Because I think that different regulators can have different views, but really it's incumbent upon us as an industry to take that and say, we're compliant across as many things as possible. So it's not like we're only European compliant or this compliant, is let's be the best, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does get complicated because there are different rules depending on the different jurisdictions,
Yeah,
and you want to make sure that you're complying with those jurisdictions. So I call it like air traffic control. You got to land all these planes
yeah,
and schedule them and figure that out. And I think having that tool that can help you do that, which I'm sure in other episodes we'll be talking about it because Rich and I are working on some really exciting
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah.
we'll keep that in suspense for another conversation.
That's great. So, but basically, Explain AI, we have something called TNE Explain, which is essentially a pluggable system. I can't help but talk about it. A pluggable system where new idea comes out. It's the sum of everything. We also we're doing a leaderboard, Steve knows, which is
Yeah.
basically what are the best models for doing this as opposed to just the models that you have internally. And a lot of times, a combination of open source models is much better than others, and it's also cheaper. So it's a pure win. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay. Yeah, just bear with me. I'm just
No worries.
navigating. I got this new laptop, and it's kind of hard to go from slide to slide here. So
I know how that is. I'm glad you're slide clicking, not me.
there it is.
Okay,
There it
so
is.
I just wanted to cover the slide, the formatting isn't that great, but basically this gets to our mission. We're going to just talk about some of the products we're doing now, making it easy. Basically the three things we're trying to do: get to these reliable results, make them accurate. Because the best way to be regulatory compliant is make the results relevant and accurate, make them easy to deploy, and then one of the things that Steve knows is we're doing is trying to be very outcome focused. So we've tried to get to the point where, we're not just charging a cajillion dollars, but really when the thing works, we get paid. And that's a very important idea. Next slide. So this is sort of what we're up to. So we call it an AI agent operating system. What that means is it's basically a layer of software that floats above all of the other models, and it adds these important features. The first one is safety. And basically, we have an approach which we took on last year, which is every query, everything's always validated and cached. So if we have an answer, we remember it. So next time you ask, it's the same thing. And where we can, we just write code. The second thing is we are privacy first. So we have these open models, and you can distribute them anywhere. But having an open model really makes it easy to push things anywhere that you want. Um, and one of the ways that you get more reliability and accuracy is essentially to have what are called model ensembles. So you can think of this as a bunch of models talking to each other to come up with the correct answer. And by the way, just like people, better to ask four experts than one, right, Steve? Just
Yep.
always true. So we do
Absolutely.
the same thing. And then this thing
Yep.
called graph is a very important idea for anyone who's super technical. The world of agents basically means you're going to have all these autonomous. It's a little bit scary when I describe it this way. Autonomous systems waiting around. You're going to ask it a question, and it's going to give you an answer, and then it's going to pass it to the next guy. You can think of it as like um, software robots running around. You have to have some way to manage them all. So we have a graph program that basically makes it controllable. And then T&E data. Go ahead.
Hey, Rich, just
Yeah.
just to maybe to understand this, is it kind of like a workflow?
Yes,
Is
it's
graph
exactly
like
like
a workflow?
a workflow. And the nice thing about just talk about one technical problem. What if the agent is out to this classic thing? You're so dependent on, say, the loan processing agent, and it goes to sleep and it crashes. What do you do? So
Yeah.
there are a lot of these recovery, retry things. Should I do something else? And this is where the English language rules come in. You don't want to write software to do this. You want to write a PowerPoint deck that you can show a regulator. This is what we're doing in our process, and the computer should take that and operate on it. So workflows today have been very technical, right? And you've seen this. Suddenly something gets discombobulated somewhere, and you don't process any reports. So
Right.
this whole graph thing is about recovery. Where are things? Can I use a smaller model instead of the bigger model and have things go through, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, your traceability thing is super important. Is keeping track of everything that happened, so you can just
Right.
report it. No, this is how this report was actually generated.
Well, and the reality is, depending on what I need, will depend on what type of model I want to use, right? So,
Yeah,
if I want, a model to where I don't need to know everything that's going on in the internet, I've got a very specific thing. I can send it to a very low cost edge
yep,
model.
yep.
If I got something that I need kind of all of the knowledge that's out there, then I can go out. And so, does this graph or workflow make that happen? Will it make the
Absolutely.
decision where to send out those
Exactly.
requests?
And what it's going to do, though, Steve, instead of having a long meeting, you're going to get to write. in a Word document, here's how I would like this to happen. And this idea that you can program these things in English is plain language is really an important idea. So, for instance, you can say things like, "If I get more than 5,000 backed up queries, I need to go to my secondary processor, or I might need
Yeah.
to go to a fast processor. I may need to send an alert." Before that was all programming. It was actually pretty hard to do. It would take months in an IT shop to do this. And now with automated coding, you can just do that like in an afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that an interesting question came through about it's not so much FOMO, but it's like the fear of moving fast or too fast.
Oh, Naveen
How
invented a
should
new term. I love it.
yeah, exactly. How should stakeholders decide when to commit or decide to commit
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
all of this stuff going on? You know,
Yeah.
saying any LLM integration, which
Yeah.
I believe that it's like 3 months thing may
Yeah. Yeah.
change dramatically.
Yeah. Well, I think Naveen, this is a great question. This is part of the reason that we invented this Orion operating system because we can change to a new model in literally like a day. So, last year was like, oh, am I committed to OpenAI? I'm committed to this or that. The message here is it's shifting so often. You have to be able to move, find, and curate the right models. And think of it like an ensemble, sort of like a soccer team where you can change without having to cause everything to be reprogrammed. And this has been one of the big problems when you're tied into the specific programming language of a particular vendor. Then obviously you're stuck, and so creating Orion is about a relatively easy investment you can make so that you're not committed to a particular LLM. In fact, you can change models and reevaluate them dynamically. Makes sense? Yeah. So why don't we just go to the next slide and see how all this
Sure.
gets put together?
Well, I'm actually pretty psyched that we have people from all around the world. I
I,
saw
I love
somebody
it.
somebody from Qatar, somebody from Chile, London, Dubai. We
Oh,
got
yeah.
people from all
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show that, hopefully we can show this demonstration, Steve, if you just click on this. And what this is showing is why you want to have an ensemble of models. So why don't you
Is
just
it a
do
video?
It's a video. Can you video click? I forgot to
I
ask
don't,
you if
I
you
don't
can, man.
know. I don't know. I don't
Get
think I
it?
can. Sorry.
You
Next
can.
time I'm
Okay.
gonna have to just upload the video.
Okay. Sorry about that. So
No, no, it's
we
okay.
can. Yeah. No problem, Navin. So what this app demo would show, if we had time to show it, is essentially this is just a regular receipt, right? And how do you process this? So this, by the way, that entire demonstration is just running on my laptop, and we actually use four models. And what you discover is the tiny little model that can run on a phone is actually faster and more accurate than the gigantic model that runs in the cloud. So it's not true that the biggest model always wins. What we do is we ensemble them so you can see, okay, I'm going to basically take the best judgment and run all the models in parallel and then merge all the results together. So this idea that you can take a single model and merge it together is a super important idea for us, right?
Yeah.
So let me just show you another example. So this is how it actually working inside. So we have something called Safe AI, and this is sort of our novel way of handling these problems. The first is, if you look on the left at the input data that comes in, it can come from anywhere. And basically what the system says is it the same question and the same data that I just asked, right? So instead of having the LLM regenerate the whole thing, you just return the answer, right? Then the second thing we say is, okay, if it's the same thing but it's new data, can I just write software? By the way, the nice thing about software is it's traceable, right? You
Hmm.
know exactly where it came from. You can give it to a regulator. So 80% of the time, we're either returning a cached answer or returning something that's generated by code. And so what that lets you do is you can really tell a regulator, as an example, hey, most of the stuff is really, really, really routine. Um, And I think that the last piece is once if it's really new and really new data, then you want to run what we call full jury. You want to run the most powerful models, and in fact, if it's really hard, you just want to put a human in the loop for them to inspect it. Um,
So, what does a full jury mean? What does that
Full
mean?
jury means you might run every one of the big models on the question. You may want to run it for days even,
Okay.
just to make sure you got the right answer. You may want to run a full validation step and actually have a human inspect it. So
But
you
let's
really,
just say you run a full jury,
yeah.
and then you get different answers.
Yeah,
So
then you would likely call a human. You basically to
okay,
say we can't answer this question. Computers are so good at answering things with nonsense. Our approach to this is just the opposite, which is we are going to have humans in the loop for a long time, right?
yeah.
And human validation is going to remain very important. Um, you know, uh, Marcin was asking about ISO IEC 4200, which is the AI management system, which has been adopted as an ISO standard. I think that's actually very important. So this whole procedure for validating processes and how humans are correctly innovated, that's what we're trying to do with our product we'll talk about soon, which is what we call TNE Explain. So basically how
Hmm.
all this happens. I don't think we should, as an industry should be shy about saying, yes, we have humans in the loop all the time,
No,
right?
of course not.
And we should be proud of it because we
Yeah.
still need people to oversee these things. I always take comfort when I'm in a Waymo car that there is somebody in a data center somewhere watching over in the worst case.
Well,
So,
you're comfortable on that. I'm still not there yet, but
well, let's say more comfortable than no human in the loop,
yeah,
right?
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to get to the point of recognizing is these safe AI techniques are very, very important. And when you talk to a vendor, if they're not running all of this free software, which by the way is ISO 4200, 42001, they love us for this, then you are making some big mistakes. Don't ever run just one LLM call and then trust it. That is like
Yeah.
not good for the road.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
next slide. So I just want to explain how this whole thing works because people oftentimes ask me like, what is actually happening? So the way to think about it is that big orange box, a big uh, yellow box is really your application. And it's wrapped around something called Orion that's safe, private, has a library, does the grafting and so forth. So you're really writing interfaces to Orion itself, and you're insulating yourself from all the changes in the LLM world. And if you look on the bottom, it can take data from your back office or from external sources. It can publish office data. And then the users, in essence, can operate on the system. And the key idea is that when you're building these vertical agents, the users are writing in English. Think of it as the standard operating procedures. We're selecting the base models, the base things you're taking from, and then we're creating a vertical AI agent just for your company which is completely safe and private. And that really is, I think, the goal. Data is the new mode, but the agents are the real way you power your business. You can think of them then, for instance, for doing a CRM thing. There'd be a special agent for answering questions. There'd be a special agent for doing loan consolidation, for instance. So that's sort of the
Yeah.
way the whole system operates. And having Orion there in the middle basically uh, solves the fear of moving too fast and also solves the fear of missing out. So we do both things at the same time. That's good.
So,
Yeah,
Rich,
yeah,
going back to that percentage, that 80%
yeah,
of these things
yeah,
failing, tell me this setup that you're showing us here. How does this actually help increase the probability that things won't fail, or
yeah.
that the stuff that you're doing has a better chance of success?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's three ways. The first is that when you're writing those applications in English language, we put a lot of help there. So our emphasis is not on writing code; it's on the right standard operating procedures. And I think you and I both know it's so much better when someone can write the problem in English in a Word doc or a PowerPoint deck before you get deep into all the implementation stuff. So I think that writing English stuff solves a lot of problems. By the way, I've been in so many meetings where stakeholders they actually disagree on what the problem is, and let's just solve it right there. Like,
Right.
what is the system really designed to do? So that box in the upper left is, I think, going to be the biggest win.
Mm.
The second thing is instead of focusing on is this LLM better than this LLM by 2%, with Orion, you just don't have to worry about that, right? And then many times you're going to pick a model that is safer because it's been used a lot, and then you can switch to the new one later. So you don't have this huge, oh my God, I'm technology fixated, and you can come right off the bleeding edge anytime you want. So those two things I think are going to help tremendously in terms improving AI failure, reducing AI failure rates.
So,
Yeah,
so one of the things I hear, Rich, one of the things I hear is that the AI is only as good as the underlying data.
yeah,
And nobody on this call, unless some magics happen, nobody has perfect data.
Yeah,
And if you have perfect data, please message me. I'd like to hear who you are.
yeah,
But what do people do? I mean, you're not going to stop everything and wait
yeah,
for perfect
yeah,
data.
yeah.
So how does this solve it? Does it make things worse at an exponential
Well, it's a
when
really
you're
good
using this
question.
technology?
Really, really good question. One of the key things that we do is we actually have a system skeptic that runs as an independent agent that just looks at all the bad data and says, did it materially affect the result? This is a really
Mhm.
important idea that the data is always going to be dirty, but you and I both know if you just see one bad row, you just say, I'm paying attention to it. And I think we have to realize, data is the dirty the day it got in. And a lot of the safe AI stuff is about, in fact, we have a specific tool that basically says, I know the data is bad, look at where the data is bad, but was the final result actually materially affected, right? The second thing is a lot of the data problems are actually not really data problems, but they're incorrect extrapolations. And I'll give you one example. We were working with a supply chain company. They're trying to do forecasting, and our system basically said, you can't forecast December because you only have 11 months of data. You don't know what the seasonality is.
Mm.
Right. And you know this, right? I mean, unless you've got a couple years of the full thing, you don't know what the seasonality is. So you shouldn't just take the last 11 months and move forward. By the way, that is what standard operating procedures are about. It's like,
Yeah,
when should you forecast? When should you not forecast? How much is material or not material? If I'm missing more than 10% of the data, I'm not going to do the loan app, as an
yeah.
example.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I just a quick reminder to everybody on. Thank you for joining and listening in. We have about 12 minutes left. So if you
Yep.
have any pressing questions, please do send them through. We'll just continue on, but you'll send them through, and we'll go ahead and see if we can address them on the call.
Absolutely. Let's go to the next one. So this is actually, I think, a really interesting chart from my friend Will Pula Capria, where this is a big venture capital firm. They estimated how much data there is that is outside of the internet. And it's stunning how much data is in the what's called the invisible deep web, which is your emails, your actual internal data. And remember, public chatbots are only trained on the visible data. So every time I see someone hand over their data to these big public chatbots, I think you have to ask, well, what am I doing? Not only many times it's regulatorily not allowed, but you're really giving away the most important asset that you have in your company. Kind of a stunning fact, don't you think? How much is
No,
just
no, it's
inside?
crazy. I mean, uh, and I think that's why these controls are going to be incredible because I can tell you these companies don't even know what data they're leaking today.
Yeah, that's right.
and
That's right.
and so they're flying blind. And I think and that's why I'm kind of excited at the next iteration of this talk to be talking about how we're going to help companies actually know exactly what
Exactly.
applications people are using, how to
Absolutely.
control it, how to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go to the next slide and show you some more examples. So I want to talk about one thing, which is the implications of January 25th when when DeepSeek landed. And really the product implication, which we've been talking about, is 95% of the stuff runs perfectly on a standard PC. And then societally, it's really possible to build these non-aligned AI hubs. Canada's done it, Dubai's done it. I think there are going to be a lot of people where they're saying, I can build my own AI expertise in my country. That I think, you and I are both, we're seeing this all the time, right, Steve? It's not just you have to go to one particular place to learn things. You can do it all in the Dubai AI Technical Center, no problem. You can do it in Singapore. So don't be afraid of this stuff. If you're thinking you can't be world class in Bangladesh or in Qatar or in anywhere, that's just not true. We're here to help you do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, and again, just a little plug. We'll be at the AI campus at the DIFC on Monday, which is where our Dubai offices are based.
Yep. Next slide. So I just want to talk about some examples and being on the journey together. By the way, I just want to comment that this image was done on my laptop in 20 seconds with a local large language model system. So you can just see
Nice.
how fast this is coming together. In fact, all the images were created that way. Next slide. So I just want to give you some examples of what people are doing with us. This is actually a real-time know your customer application. And uh, what it's doing is it's actually, and it's interesting that this application was created and we produced this in about 10 days. Right. And what it does is it goes to internal providers. It does a real time web search. It's got a very simplified entry. It does automatic reporting recommendations for banking relationship managers. Victor, how long would it have taken you to write this application in the old way, Steve? I mean,
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
it's crazy. Let's
It
do
is.
another one.
Yeah, I saw we've got something in from Emma talking
Oh,
about the
yeah.
importance of boards to really understand this. And I think, one thing, Rich, you and I discussed, but we haven't implemented yet, is is talking about having board level training
Yep.
so that boards understand the capability. I think a lot of boards are getting updated, but I think there's a lot of noise out there.
Yeah.
And you and I actually talking about releasing something pretty soon that has both board level training, but then they also can get certificates from a major
Yeah.
university. I
Yeah.
won't mention which one yet, but everybody that knows me could
But not,
already assume what university that'll
not,
be.
not not some crappy junior school in California, of course, an actual real institute.
No, no, no. That's yeah. All right, we won't talk about universities here.
All
Okay,
right.
good. Let me just try to go to the next
Yeah.
slide here.
And I just want to emphasize, I think this is really important to understand how quickly and how much boards need to understand these big trade-offs. And also, I think any company's not being has got to do these 2025, 26 forecasts, don't you think, Steve? Like what's
Yep.
going to
Yep.
happen. It's not just looking backwards. This example, by the way, was put together in 5 days, and it's actually a sustainability reporting application, and actually can do text and speech. The entire interface you see there is generated dynamically by a large language model. There are no buttons. It's all done by voice commands, and one person wrote this app. So this is the change that's happening, and it's nice to have a platform like Orion because we actually use multiple large language models. We didn't have to bid on a single one, and when things get better, we just get better. Let's do another one.
Remind me, Rich, to follow up with you on this one because I did get a request out of Saudi Arabia,
Oh,
and I've got to get back to a friend that she's told me she's gotten a lot of requests about this specifically. So I'll
perfect. Yeah, well, we're doing our one-on-one in the middle of a LinkedIn chat. This is
yeah,
great.
exactly. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and John Galani's got a really really good question. Right.
All right, John. What's the question?
Uh, basically, I'm not going to paraphrase. Many exercises are application specific and they're going to quickly deprecate. With so many LLMs created and constantly updated, and the security implications, aren't corporates not going to be obliged to build their own models on the demand side and large AI players maintain generic ones on the supply chain? If so, then companies would need to keep an AI expert in-house to maintain and update and outsource this. What is the best strategy to advise a board in terms of long-term implementation of AI? Oh, first of all, this is a question Steve, you and I talk about all the time. This is just as important as any other supply chain issue, which is, and by the way, I agree with you, John. You're going to be in a position, if you're a big corporation, you got to have your own models. You just going to have to
Yeah.
do that. I think that partially the big reason Steve and I co-created TNE.ai is to help people do that so that you can build your own models. You can use things that are known secure. And by the way, this is a lot like Linux and the cloud, right? You need to do something that's based on open source. So you can hold it. And then, in terms of AI expertise in-house and how to update this or outsource it, I guess that's one of the reasons why we're here, right? Some of the
That's
stuff
it.
you're going to need to have some experts who've really thought about this, that have been in the industry a long time. So give us a call. We're happy to help you. And I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
to me, just so you know, what we did at Microsoft was the board heard the long-term predictions and then what you're doing about it. But if you're not thinking 2 to 3 years in advance and having good people, and there are very few who have the business background to do this, it's just going to be very, very hard to build these
Yeah.
applications well. So I actually think that quick deprecation is going to be one of our challenges, and I don't want to
Mm.
see these applications deprecate quickly. Now, I'm going to end this with just this last application, which is, I think, kind of stunning. So we built this application in basically 10 days, and what it is it's trying to have thousands of reps to hundreds of thousands of resellers to tens of millions of customers. And it basically is voice and messaging communications integrated with a chatbot answering system. We applied AI to we're doing a model per rep. So this is not a model per company. Every rep has an own model that replicates the way they talk and type, right? And we dynamically train them. And we're actually in the middle of building the first things out. By the way, interesting thing about this is this actually speaks Hindi. It actually speaks a combination of Hindi, English, and the combination with emojis. And
Wow.
and to answer your question fully, John, I don't think this application is going to deprecate fully because last week a gigantic new model came in that, as I said, was 50 times faster, and we're in the middle of deploying that right now. I think Ala has another question. You want me to answer this one?
Yeah, if you can, yeah. Well, if you can read it out and then answer it,
Oh, yeah.
because I can't see it.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah.
then for our
I don't know why I'm
callers,
so
if
much.
they
I
can't
don't know
see it.
why I'm so much more superior to you, given 3 minutes left.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
a concern raised by some organizations is when non-domain experts start using AI, there'll be a risk of that not being able to detect when the AI is inaccurate. Oh, or the input issues, et cetera, et cetera. So, what do you do when you don't really know what you're not an expert? How do you make sure this stuff is right?
Yeah,
I
that's a good point. Very good point.
and I think the answer is, this is why we built our little company. Just an example, when you get an answer back from us, you get the full methodology written in plain English. Like, here's why I got the data. Here's where it came from. Here are the rows and records that we looked at. So in full, gory detail here. And then the second, and that's called our methodology agent. Then we have a skeptic agent that says, and here are all the reasons why you might be suspect about this. And then we have a citation agent that literally says every number, here's where it came from, here's why I think it's right. So just like everything else, you got to, just like in a PowerPoint deck, don't take it by its word. You got to ask where the numbers came from. Yes, Steve.
And Rich, if I can just add on to that, because I want the people on this call to know, when I looked at partnering up with somebody in AI, obviously driving innovation, doing all this stuff, I had a lot of exposure to a lot of things. And when I met Rich, I finally met someone that not only spoke the language, but knew exactly what he was talking about. And we both have the battle scars to, have things go wrong, and know how to implement successful software. Right, Rich being at Microsoft knows how to package software, knows how to sell, SaaS, and then different models of way of going. And so that's why part of what I'm trying to do at Horizon X is finding the best and the brightest in the industry, partner up with them, and then go to market. And that's why I feel incredibly lucky and confident that what we're doing with Rich is actually changing a lot of stuff, and I'm seeing it firsthand. And so it's just a matter of us going out there, applying it to different use cases, and see how it goes. So, yeah, Rich, I think we got
We're out
30
of
more
time.
seconds.
30 more
Yeah, yeah.
seconds. Last lick, Steve. Say what you want to
Any,
say. Goodbye. We'll
yeah.
see you in
Well,
Dubai.
yeah, we'll see anybody in Dubai next week. We'll be in Dubai next week. We'll probably have another LinkedIn Live in about a month from now. I promise you, I'll be better prepared. I got this new laptop, and none of the windows are working for me, but that's okay. Rich, as always, knows how to kind of carry this forward. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and look forward to seeing you guys on the other side. Thank you.
Bye, guys.